so where we ended last video, I said there was something I was going to do and I forgot what it was. And of course, the moment you stop recording, you remember. So we're going to do one last thing on the part one, and then we'll move into the part two content, which is here. But I just want to do this part. So I'm going to move over to my Google Drive, right? So here we are in week one. And the one thing I want you to do is go up and do part one. Select, click and drag, and make this a heading 2, which indicates it's under a heading 1. So this is a major heading. For each week you will use that. And now we're on to part 2. Okay, and like any good word processor, the other thing you can do is hit your paint format and then just click and drag across. And that's just another way to format. You'll learn that if you don't already know it in Word as well. And that's the nice thing here is you're learning multiple programs, which you may think is the bad thing, but it's honestly a really good thing because it's just the nature of life. All right, here's what I want you to do now. So one thing that I saw came up last semester a lot with students was that this really important shared with Rio folder, only a few, most of them got it, but a few of them had a little bit of a hard time. So I want to make sure you did it right. And here's how we do it. You're going to right click on it and you go to share just like we did before, but this time go to advanced. And now we have this long URL that represents the folder view. And I'm going to copy that, okay? And then I'm going to scroll down and hit done. Okay, so I copied that. I'm going to scroll down and hit done. I'm going to go back into the Google Doc, and under the part 2 I'm going to type shared with Rio Waller. And this is something you're going to do in this class, so I don't mind doing it here as well. Now I could, don't do it this way, I could copy and paste that, but that's not really clean. So let's do it this way, because you're going to do this a lot. So I'm going to click and drag across, go into the icon, click insert, paste that, and now that's a URL that when I come in here I can see if you've done this part correctly. Okay, again, these are all good things and know how to do, so even though you might wonder why are we doing this, you'll understand later. All right, so let's move on, and I started talking about this a little bit, so now we're into part 2 officially. We were going to talk about a typical week, which I kind of said, but it's worth looking at. Okay, so I've actually moved my canvas into the student view. All right, and the student view for week 1, as I showed you before, a typical week, right? Week 1 is not, because it's a beginning of the class. It's really into week 2. So I haven't released it yet. So the other way I could look at this is to go to the syllabus. Again, and I think I mentioned this, but this is the external link, and this is what we call an embedded link. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here, which, by the way, while we're here, so let's go ahead and note this. Classwork that you're working on right now is worth 20% of this course. It's an important part, right? Hands-on, which I'll talk about, chapter quizzes. You can see the breakdown here. So these are hands-on assignments will be hands-on, things that you actually take and hopefully integrate the knowledge you've gotten. Chapter quizzes are from the textbook or the ebook. My IT lab assessments, we'll talk about those maybe on this one, maybe on the next one. The lab test, there's only 3 of these, Word, Excel, and Access, and then the chapter final. But I'm going to scroll down here because I want you to see a typical week. That's really where I was heading, right? So here's our typical week, which is the week 2. So then on a Thursday, you'll have my screens, which will be a different video. You'll have week 2 classwork, and then that's Thursday. And then Monday, you'll have a chapter quiz and a word. So chapter quizzes are done in Canvas. So let's just slow down in your notes. So chapter quizzes are completed in Canvas, right, in this program here. And then Word, anytime you see Word, Excel, or Access, those are completed in my IT lab. All right, so that's what a typical week is. And at first, students tell me when they hear me going over week 1 classwork, they're like, oh my God, there's so much work. But honestly, they say once you get into it, it's just what I've done is I've chunked it. Right, so I've organized it into chunks of time. So some classes you have one big test This class is more like, I would say that's more like a sprint. My class is more like a marathon. So we just keep working at it. We might not have those big spikes of items, but we have items due every week. Okay, so I wanted to show you that's what a typical one looks like. So the My IT Lab stuff, I want to show you this, is that My IT Lab is required. I talked about this, and boy, is this a really, really, really important thing that has to go in your notes, is that you have to acquire the My IT Lab by September 2nd. That's the end of the third week. And I can't go into the reasons why, but here's the thing you want to know is if you don't get it by then, you can't get it. Okay, really, really important. You have to get it by that date or you won't be able to get it. And because of the amount of things at this class, because of the amount of things that require My IT Lab, passing would be impossible. Chapter quiz, My IT Lab test, assessments, and for us, chapter quizzes also depend on having the book. So it's a really, really important part, and you have to have it by this date. They do allow you to set up a trial account in My IT Lab, okay? But what you really want to know is that you have to get it. Now, here's the other thing. So put that in your notes. So now I'm going to open this again because the other thing I want to show you is that they've provided us so that we can provide to you, and I've done this in the syllabus, so I will now want to go over it, detailed instructions for how to create your account. Okay, so if you're online, right, this is the My IT Lab course ID, and if you're face to face, meaning you come into the classroom, this is your ID number for your My IT Lab course, because you have to set up your My IT Lab course, your login yourself, and it's not done automatically like Canvas is done for you. So let me go ahead and just click onto one of these. This is a PDF file that's created. It shows you step by step, so follow it step by step what you need to do to create your account. Okay, so I want you to know that when you will need to follow these instructions, make sure you're in the right section for the My IT Lab. Okay, so hopefully have a few notes on that. So now I'm going to go over to My IT Lab. I'm already logged in as an instructor, and I'm just going to go in to one of the courses just to give you a brief look at the My IT Lab. Okay, so inside of here, you will go into course materials, and here's the thing, put in your notes, all due dates are listed in Canvas. So I try to take them out of the My IT Lab, but if you ever see anything, just know that all your due dates are listed in Canvas. Okay, so what you'll do, you're in here, the course materials, in course materials, and then within course materials is course materials, and that's where the ebook is. Okay, so when you want to do a quiz and you want to search the ebook, this is where you would do it. Okay, so I'm going to back up one director because I want to also do this. So the way you work through these items is not in this sequential order, meaning it's not this, this, and this. The way you work through it is based on what comes up in Canvas, right? So in Canvas, as things come due, like I told you, the Word, right? So we have Word Chapter 1. What you will do is complete that. So I want to go in and just show you briefly here. So in here we have a training and assessment. So the training is not graded, but it is definitely highly recommended that you complete the training because it will prepare you for the assessment. And then the assessment is what you get graded on, right? And then I will show you, so let me just complete this. So here's your chapter 1. Training and assessment. I will give you, I believe in this case, I give you 3 attempts at the assessment, right? And for each question, I think you have several attempts you can do. So, but doing the trainings will definitely prepare you for doing the assessment. And later I'll talk about other reasons you want to do the trainings as well. Okay, so that's what I want you to know, is that's for now, that's the most important thing for you to understand, is that you have to set it up. You have a timeline to do that. Make sure you get in the right one. The training is not required, highly recommended, but the assessment is. Okay, and that's what you get graded on. And if you want to look, and I always say it's important to do this, there's another way to look at the breakdown here, is the My IT Lab assessments are worth a total of 15% because there's 12 of them. Then this breaks down to show you how each of them as a percentage weighs in your overall grade. Okay? All right, so we're moving through these items. Let's see. We have talked about here. We haven't talked about quizzes. We've talked about classwork. So let me just briefly talk about quizzes now. So when you get to the quiz, again, you can use your calendar, you can use this, or in this case, I also have a quiz link. So you can actually go in here and you will see listed for each chapter. You can take this multiple times up until the due date. Okay, so you can see the due dates are listed here, even though it says 30 points, right? Remember, going back here, quizzes, chapter quizzes, there's 13 of them. They're 20% of your grade, 1.54. So unlike some other courses, my chapter quizzes are not done on a timed, like you can only do it in its open book. It's not a closed book, so you can do it whenever you want. So put this in your notes. You can do chapter quizzes whenever you want up until the due date. Okay? So then you just go into the chapter quiz. You'll have 30 items that'll be in here. Oh, okay, so right now this item hadn't been published, but you will see them listed, and you can save them, and when you're ready to submit them, you can submit it. You'll see a grade. So that's the other thing about looking at your grades. I really try to organize the course so you can clearly see how you're doing in the course and where things are. But again, going back to what I showed before, even though it may look like chapter quizzes are less as far as points, it's not, because what you really want to look at is this percentage. Okay? All right, so the other thing, and I will say this going back here, is this is where I tried to explain in week 0, is that your e-textbook, right, is that getting the My IT Lab, you also get the e-textbook. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Hopefully they have this set up. And I should click here and I should just have a view of the ebook, which is awesome. I'll probably talk a little more about this later, ways to use it. But again, you can search it, you can search for terms. And you might wonder, well, isn't that really kind of not the idea of a quiz? Well, really the idea of a quiz in my class is to get you more exposed to the chapter. Because yeah, I definitely recommend you read the chapter, right? And that chapter quiz is a test of how well you gain that information. But I also don't dictate how you work through the chapter quiz. The chapter, it may be the chapter quiz that helps you get familiar with the information. Okay, so here you have searches. There's different ways you can search. You can browse, right? So if I mean, this would be a horrible word, right? So if I just searched for a word, I'd probably search for a series of words in a chapter or in a quiz. Then I could search for it within each chapter as well. So it gives you multiple functions there. Okay, so let's go back here because I think I've covered that in your notes. We've gone over the quizzes, the My IT Lab, and classwork. So hands-on, and then I'll show you how to submit this. So hands-on are really the part of the course students tell me is one of their favorite, and it's really where we take some of these concepts and we give you experiences to help solidify your knowledge about this stuff. And what will happen is we'll do the Hello World, the My Screens, and then we'll start into the Code Academy. So starting in week 3 here, we're going to do Code Academy for several weeks. And Code Academy is going to teach you some basic HTML, some basic CSS, and some basic JavaScript. And you'll hear me talk about, as the course goes on, why this is so important. It's become just a part of computer literacy these days to have some idea, because I mean, think about the web, think about the internet, but really think about every web page you look at is made up of 3 technologies, and having a basic knowledge of that is good. Okay, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So our hands-on will mostly focus on that stuff, although around mid part of the semester I will have you do a movie. which I think is really fun to use the YouTube editor or whatever it is that you would like to do to create a movie. And then we'll get into other things. We will have a programming assignment. Ah, that's what I wanted to say. I'm glad I brought that up. So for some of you, now I happen to be using a Mac, right? So typically, many people, right? Windows is their operating system. Let's say Windows 10, right? So if you're a Windows 10 user, you should have no challenges as far as the assignments that require only Windows, right? But if you're a Mac user, there are going to be at least 2 times in this semester that you're going to need to have access to either Windows virtualized, and I'll go over that. I'll actually cover that probably in one of the lectures, how to do that. And what that means is I can run, matter of fact, let me just show you. It's not a bad thing. I'm going to search for what's called VirtualBox. So in your notes, again, even if you're not a Mac user, it's just good to know. So I'm on a Mac right now, but I'm going to go ahead and start Windows, right? Part of this class is you can get Windows 10 for free as being a student. And then what I've done is used a software called VirtualBox, which is free. So I don't know if you're catching all these free words, but free. Again, if you're on the Mac, I highly recommend you set this up. Not only for the 2 times you're going to need it, and 2 times are going to be the Visual Basic stuff and the Access, which is what we're covering, Word, Excel, and Access. So this is actually Windows running on my Mac. Let's see if I type that password in. Try it one more time. Well, I'll remember it in a minute. So I just want you to know that. So put that in your notes, is that there are going to be 2 times that you're going to need to have Windows for this course if you happen to be on a Mac or something else. Okay? Okay, so I think we've got it. So now you're actually ready. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you how to submit, right, the classwork, because now we've been all the way through this, right? So again, you should have all the notes that I've done here, that we went over, part 1 and part 2. I got it done in 2 parts. That's amazing, probably a little longer than I anticipated. And now you're going to submit. So you're going to copy this. Oh, before I do this, sorry, I'm going to show you how to do a shortened URL. Okay, shortened URLs are great. So what you can do here is you can copy this, because each time you turn in classwork, you're turning in the same URL. Remember when we start into here, right, this week 2, so always put the most current week at the top, right? So when you do this, I like to use the Google one. You can use Bentley or whatever. When you paste that in, you get a shortened URL. So now from now on, once you keep that, then all you have to do is copy that. I'm going to show you how. Again, in Canvas, we're still in the student side. I'm going to show you how to submit your classwork for week 1. All right. So for week 1, you go down, you make sure you've watched all the videos, you submit, and then that URL, that's the shortened URL. Now if you didn't do the shortened URL, you could do the long one, which is totally fine as well. Then it would be this one. Copy, come over to Canvas, and paste it. You can just kind of see why the shortened wasn't as nice. And if you want to give me any comments, that's fine, and then hit submit. Okay? And then what will happen is I will go in and grade it. Right? So then you can see in your grades, right, turns it in, shows it, and you can see that you turn this in, and when I grade it, you will see a grade. Okay, I hope this was helpful to give you an idea of how this class works.